Welcome back, everybody. This is the thejonnymar, and take a look at what I'm playing. That's right, I have finally come back to Final Fantasy I, the Dawn of Souls version for the PSP, and I am going to finally, after a little bit of a hiatus, take on the extra bonus dungeons that are available in this game. Now, these dungeons are only available to those of you playing the Dawn of Souls version, so that is either on the Game Boy Advance or the PSP, and they might actually be available in the iOS version as well. They are not available in the original version for the NES, and they are also not available in the Origins version for the PlayStation 1. Now, what's special about these dungeons, and I will be starting with the Earthgift Shrine, is that they are somewhat randomly determined. Now, that doesn't mean that the format of the different floors is different. They are essentially the same. But what is randomly determined is the format or the order in which you actually get the floors. So you're going to see basically all the floors that I'm showing you, but the order in which you see them might be a little bit different. Now there's a couple other things that you can actually have be a little bit different about each one as well. And that is that your location when you come into each of the levels can be a little bit different. So you might start at a different starting place than what I am in these videos. And also the treasure chest locations might be a little bit different. So there should be a chest right here in the middle of this desert, but as you see there wasn't. And you're looking for these stairs to take you down to the next floor, but I do want to show off all of the treasure chest locations where there might be chests. And another thing to keep in mind is that the chest contents might be a little bit different too. So there are the same types of items that are available in each of the floors, but the location of those chests might be a little bit different based on your time going through each of the dungeons. Now I am currently going through the Earthgift Shrine. Ooh, the black cowl. So that is actually a very decent piece of armor. Now it's not really that helpful now since I have ribbons, which are much more useful since they prevent status effects. But it is a nice piece of armor if you want to use it. But I am going through the Earthgift Shrine. This shrine became available once I beat Lich. And you can attempt it as soon as you do beat Lich. But the enemies in here are somewhat difficult. They're obviously not difficult right now for me. But that's because I'm in an endgame mode here. And so you really get to decide how early you want to do this. I would recommend waiting a little bit to actually take it on until you're a little bit higher in level, probably mid-20s to early 30s. But that is entirely up to you. The disadvantage with waiting is that basically the items that you might get in the dungeons are less useful to you. Now that will change in the later dungeons. This one is really designed to kind of give you a taste of what these specialty dungeons are like. And so the items in here are really meant to be gotten earlier in the game. But the later dungeons that we're going to be taking on as well, those have a lot of really awesome items, and they're actually some of the best items in the game. Now, another annoying thing about this dungeon, and the follow-up dungeons as well, is that basically you have to go through the dungeon multiple times, and that is because to take on the bosses of the dungeon, there are multiple bosses. And they only allow you to take on one or sometimes two of the bosses before you have to actually exit the dungeon and redo it. So I'm actually going to have to make 4 runs through this dungeon. So I'm going to show you this first run, of course, so that you can see the layout of the floors. But then I'm just going to be cutting to the boss battles so that you don't have to sit there and watch me run through all of these floors. So let's take on the first boss in our first room here. You get to decide which of the bosses you want to take on. It really depends on which one you go to. This guy is pretty confident that he's going to beat us. And it's Cerberus, the good old 3-headed dog. So our attack strategy is of course the same as it's been for much of the second half of the game, and that is boost our fighters and attack until the enemy drops into death. Now, as I mentioned, the items in this area, not the greatest, so they're really not helpful at this point in the game, you know, in the post-game content, but for completion's sake, I am going to be picking them up. And what's interesting about these kind of bosses that you're going to face in these specialty dungeons is that a lot of them are actually homages to later Final Fantasy games. So you're going to see some enemies that, are not in the original Final Fantasy, but are going to definitely be familiar to those of you that have played later games in the series. All the bosses in this dungeon have around 4,000 to 4,500 hit points, so they're not going to take very long to actually defeat. Probably 2 to 3, maybe 4 rounds at the most. Now, this is the special ability of Cerberus. For whatever reason, he can cast Thunderbolt. So the earlier that you're doing this, obviously you're going to want to be careful about that Thunderbolt because it can actually take out your entire party. But down goes Cerberus. Pretty easy, and that is because I am pretty high in level at this point. And we get the Kotatsu. So that is, of course, a specialty sword of ninja origin. It can actually be equipped by anyone in your party for the most part. And as you notice, it is not very powerful, because it's supposed to be designed for people to use much earlier in the game. Oh, and I never equipped Thor's hammer. Let's do that right now. Now, you're going to find out, upon beating Cerberus or whatever boss you take on first, that you cannot exit this door. We have to head back to the world map, and then we have to go through the dungeon again. And so I'm going to be doing that 3 more times to take out all 3 of those bosses. And I will just cut ahead, edit, so that you can see the bosses that I'm actually going to take on. And I will do all of the legwork by going through these dungeons over and over again. So I will see you guys back there in the treasure room to take on another boss. Alright, so we're back on basement 5, and we're going to take on our second boss. And that is Echidna? I don't know how to pronounce that. Pretty freaking looking boss, though. Definitely malnourished. But despite that, very long claws. You'd think someone not nourished very well would not have claws that long. But our strategy, of course, is exactly the same. Boost our fighters, take them out. Nothing new. Now, this boss does not really do any specialty abilities. It's mostly just about physical attacks. It does have a little bit of magic, but it will use it very infrequently. And depending on how long you face it, we'll probably take it out pretty quickly. Yeah, it likes to use Earthquake, which again, remember, is an instant death ability. So because we have our ribbons on and our protect rings, we are protected from it. And this might actually kill it. Down it goes. So that's 2 down, 2 to go. In reality, a lot of these specialty dungeons are really more tedious than anything else. So we're back. Of course, let's take on the third boss. Whoa, no, I don't want to go back in there. We already beat that boss. So our third boss is again very confident. It's going to take us out. And that is the 2-headed dragon. Kind of reminds me of a boss from Final Fantasy VII, although that boss had 3 heads. So this boss is entirely physically oriented. It'll just do physical attacks. And as you notice, it does a lot of damage. Now each run through this dungeon takes roughly 10 to 15 minutes. And they do have very, very high encounter rates. So expect to fight a lot of random encounters. And on that forest level that I showed off, each of those times you do run into the soldier characters, you do have to go into a random encounter. And the desert level, that is the largest level in this dungeon. And that is, again, basically the same design, but the starting location for your characters will actually be different based on, you know, a random number generator. So you will be able to find the exit eventually. You just have to use those key kind of location points to figure out where it is. And down goes the two-headed dragon. Now he's going to actually give us a piece of armor, although it's not that great, and that is the Bard's Tunic. So yeah, I mean, it improves your evasion. That's nice, but defense not that great. Alright, so let's move on and take on the final boss in the Earthgift Shrine. Our last boss may be familiar again to those of you that have played other Final Fantasies. And for some reason, his side is actually a little bit of a maze. Not quite as straightforward. But we'll get to him eventually. And he is the most confident. There are none who can stop me in all of creation. Well, we'll see about that. And it's Ahriman, I guess, is how you pronounce it. Very creepy looking design. And you actually get 2 items for beating this guy. You get the item from actually beating him in battle, and then you saw that there was a treasure chest next to him. So, same strategy. This guy will again use a little bit of instant death abilities like Earthquake, but we are protected from them. So we'll beat him down, despite his confidence level. We'll get our items and then we'll head out. And the next time we'll take on the second of the optional kind of bonus dungeons in the Dawn of Souls version of this game. And that one is actually quite a bit longer and more difficult than this first one. This one is really designed just to give you a taste of what this is like. And they just get worse. Longer and longer, the enemies get harder and harder. And that should do it. Down he goes. Now when you beat him, make sure to grab the treasure chest too before exiting. And that is it for this episode. About an hour of footage. We'll see how long it is once I get done editing it. And I'll see y'all next time, viewers, when we take on the second of the bonus dungeons. Thanks for watching, and so long.